Welcome to Coaster Hour, and today I'll be counting down the rest of my top 30 coasters going from 15 to 1, and if you haven't watched part 1, then I highly suggest you watch it before you watch this video, as it is part 2 of the list, and without further delay, let's jump right into this. Accelerator is one of the most intense coasters I've ever ridden, and that is why it is coming in at number 15. While this ride was built as more of a prototype, it was the first intimate accelerator ever built. It still holds its own against the newer versions and gives a truly memorable and powerful experience. The first launch is one of the most forceful launches in the entire world, as you go from 0 to 82 miles per hour in 2.3 seconds. The top hat delivers some great airtime over the top, and the bank turns are great for feeling the speed and are also quite intense. If you enjoy riding launch coasters and haven't gotten the chance to ride this legendary Intamin, then Accelerator should be pretty high on your bucket list. Gold Striker is by far my favorite coaster ever constructed by GCI, and that is because this wooden coaster is filled with great airtime and very strong laterals. Gold Striker also has fantastic pacing and makes great use of its tunnels, which is one of the more unique aspects of the ride. Having ridden this ride in both 2013 and 2019, I definitely do think that Gold Striker is not nearly as smooth as it once was, but the roughness isn't anything unbearable. I have not gone any night rides on Gold Striker, which I've heard are fantastic, but I can still confidently say that Gold Striker is a must-ride coaster that you need to get on if you are a fan of other GCI coasters, or wooden coasters in general. My all-time favorite coaster manufactured by B&M, Tatsu, soars into my 13th spot, and boy is this ride something else. The pretzel loop is without a doubt the highlight moment of the ride, as you feel like you are being magnetized to the track as you go through this element. It is that forceful. And the rest of this flying coaster also has some great elements, including the 0G roll and corkscrew. You really do get the sensation of flight with Tatsu, and since I haven't ridden any other flying coasters, I really do appreciate the unique experience that Tatsu provides. Storm Runner is next, and this intimate accelerator has such a weird but ultimately awesome layout that provides a great mix of intensity, speed, inversions, and airtime. Speaking of airtime, I found that the top hat provided some solid ejector along with the entrance with the Heartline roll, and the Cobra loop provided some strong hang time as well, and of course you can't forget the flying snake dive, which just gives such a weird sensation. This coaster in a way feels kind of more like a Intamin Blitz coaster rather than an accelerator, but of course you still get that very intense and memorable first launch you would find on any accelerator coaster, which is really neat. Just missing the top 10 is the first of 5 RMCs to make the list, and that is Joker, which is in my opinion the best coaster at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. The first drop on Joker is shockingly strong, and the 0G stall provides some stellar hang time. Of course though, like every RMC, Joker has some terrific airtime moments, with my personal favorite being the double down and the final 2 hills before the brakes. Unfortunately though, I would have to say that out of all the RMCs I've ridden, Joker seems to have the weakest layout, as there are multiple turns on the ride that really aren't forceful. Despite being the worst RMC I've ridden, Joker still is an absolutely amazing coaster that features great moments of airtime and hang time. At number 10, I have Railblazer, the RMC Raptor at California's Great America, and Railblazer has by far the best pacing of any coaster I have ever ridden. You just absolutely whip through every single element, making this ride also very intense. The off-axis airtime hill provides the strongest ejector airtime moment in all of California, and every airtime moment is absolutely ridiculous. It's just incredible. The back row is also definitely the best row on Railblazer, as you get to experience the crazy first drop at its full potential, and all the airtime moments seem to be the strongest there as well. The ending for Railblazer though was admittedly kind of weak, with the 2 inversions and the last turn into the brakes being a lot less memorable than the rest of the ride, and also I think that I needed to ride this coaster a few more times than I did, as this is one of those rides that I like the more I rode it. But even if only riding it twice, I can still say that Railblazer is my favorite coaster in all of Northern California. Maverick at Cedar Point comes in at number 9, and wow, is this Intamin Blitz coaster something. The beyond vertical drop on this ride is, in my opinion, the best first drop of any coaster at Cedar Point, which is actually saying a lot. The two inversions on the ride are also pretty fun. The ejector airtime hills provide some great sustained airtime. The second launch is really powerful, and of course the overbank turns are insanely whippy and crazy. This coaster has a great variety and mixture of awesome elements, and the layout, because of that, is very unique, and I also really appreciate that Maverick is a long ride, since many of the launch coasters I've ridden are pretty short. Though it isn't my favorite coaster at Cedar Point, Maverick is still a world-class ride that is among the wildest I've ever ridden. Ghost Rider has finally reclaimed its spot as my number 1 wooden coaster after taking a backseat to Gold Striker over the past several years, and comes in at number 8. Ghost Rider has everything you look for in a wooden coaster: a brilliant first drop, great pacing, strong lateral forces, and of course many fantastic moments of airtime. During the day, Ghost Rider is still definitely an awesome ride, but this ride is on a completely different level at night. Due to the lack of lights on Ghost Rider, the intensity is amped up a lot, as you won't know what element is coming next, and of course any coaster is better in the dark. During my last visit to Scary Farm, Ghost Rider was absolutely hauling, giving me some of the absolute best rides I've ever had on it, which is why it has moved up past some of the rides I used to place in front of it. At number 7 is a ride that'll surprise many of you, and this is Top Thrill Dragster. And if you remember my Cedar Point coaster rankings video, you will know that I actually placed Maverick over Dragster in my rankings, but after months of thinking it through, I decided that I preferred Dragster over Maverick. Now, with all that said, this Intamin accelerator is my favorite of all the ones I've ridden, even though it is the shortest in terms of ride duration. The first launch is my favorite launch of all time, as it is pretty long, stupidly fast, and very intense. Going over the top hat gives some great airtime as well, and the spiraling 400-foot drop is also really crazy. My advice to anyone riding Dragster is to ride in the front row, as the experience is definitely the best there, and even though you'll have to wait longer, I promise it is totally worth it. Like a few of these coasters on this list, I have already made a more in-depth review of this ride, so if you want to get my full thoughts on Dragster, go watch the review I made for it. But in short, if you're at Cedar Point and this ride is open, don't miss it. The first international coaster I had ever ridden, and the first to make the list, comes in at number 6, and that is Superman El Ultimo Escape, the Morgan Hypercoaster at Six Flags Mexico. Out of all the coasters I've ever ridden, this is by far the most underrated of all of them. No one talks about this ride, and it seems to be overshadowed by Medusa Steel, which is a real shame. The pre-lift section delivers some great airtime, which is bizarre. The turns and helixes are also very intense. The pacing is unexpectedly strong, but what makes this ride for me are the sustained ejector airtime moments that are very strong and long-lasting. My favorite airtime hills are the final few after the mid-course brake run, which barely slows you down, and the hill that comes after the helix. This hypercoaster is very different from any of the others I have ever ridden, and I hope that more enthusiasts are able to ride this fantastic coaster over the next few years. Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain is a very unique RMC coaster and one of my favorites out of the ones I've ridden. Twisted Colossus is a Mobius loop, meaning you get to experience both the blue and green side of the coaster in one ride, which basically allows you to experience the first drop twice and go through what seems like two different coaster layouts in one ride. Personally, I prefer the blue side on Twisted Colossus, as there are more and better airtime moments, though the green side does have that amazing Top Gun stall that provides stellar hang time. Twisted Colossus also is able to duel or race, and when it does race, the ride is even more fun, but unfortunately it doesn't always duel. Twisted Colossus is one of those coasters that truly is unlike any other, and this ride is probably the best dueling coaster in the world layout wise, and that is why it lands at number 5 on my list. My number 4 coaster is Medusa Steel Coaster at Six Flags Mexico, and this RMC hybrid is absolutely insane. The pacing on this coaster is absolutely insane, absolutely incredible. The barrel roll first drop and the final barrel roll are some of my favorite inversions of all time, and the airtime is also fantastic, with the off-axis airtime hill giving the strongest moment of airtime on the ride. Medusa Steel is also quite a bit more intense than Twisted Colossus and Joker, which is a nice plus, and I didn't even get the best possible experience on this ride, as the back car was actually not even on the train, and this was because I went to Six Flags Mexico during the off-season, so they were only running one train while the other was undergoing maintenance. Six Flags Mexico may not have the strongest coaster collection, but they do have this world-class coaster that provides one of the best overall coaster experiences you could ask for. If you had to ask me which coaster out of all the ones I've ridden provides the strongest airtime, I would have to say that Skyrush takes the cake. This Intamin hypercoaster is an absolute beast of a ride, as it provides some of the strongest airtime on Earth, but it also provides some great positive Gs, especially on the first turn, following the absolutely amazing first drop. The restraints on Skyrush admittedly make airtime moments a bit painful, but honestly I don't think they're that bad, and they do even make you feel open, which adds to the intensity and craziness of Skyrush. And even with Candemonium being built in 2020, I still believe that Skyrush is and will remain the top coaster at Hershey Park. Now we have come to my top two coasters, and these are both some really special rides that I really don't like having to choose between, but coming in at number 2 is X2, the Aero 4th Dimension coaster at Magic Mountain. And for many years this was my number 1 coaster, and though it no longer is my number 1, I still absolutely love this ride. A back row inner seat ride is a must on X2, as you get the most intense experience possible with a relatively smooth ride. X2 has a lot of insane and intense elements that make for a disorienting, out of control feeling ride experience, but my favorite element on X2 and on any coaster period is the first drop, and this thing is just nuts. You head down this crazy 215 foot 88-degree drop face down, and right before you get to the bottom you flip 360 degrees. X2 is just a ride that I can't believe exists, but I'm just thankful it does, and if you like really intense out of control experiences, then you absolutely need to ride X2. Now, for my number 1 favorite coaster of all time, I have Steel Vengeance, the legendary RMC hybrid coaster at Cedar Point that features more airtime than any other ride on the planet, as you get over 27 seconds of it, which is absolutely mental, and the airtime on Steel Vengeance, especially on the hills in the second half, is pretty strong, though I wouldn't say that any one particular airtime moment felt ridiculously powerful. I got 5 rides on this beast on my one-day visit to Cedar Point, including a night ride, which was easily my favorite ride, as I actually found it hard to tell which element was coming next, making my experience feel out of control, and the ride was running the best it had all day. Specifically, my favorite moments on Steel Vengeance are the first drop, the tall, outer banked airtime hill, and the second half of Steel Vengeance, which is just an absolute airtime buffet. Now, while Steel Vengeance is currently my number 1 coaster and an absolutely amazing ride, I still feel like there are definitely some coasters out there that could overtake it. I mean, you have Ijanika in Japan, which has been called X2 on steroids, Lightning Rod, which is super fast paced and looks to provide stellar ejector airtime, and El Toro, the Intamin prefab, that has some of the strongest airtime in the world, and those are just a few rides that I think might be better, but at least for now, Steel Vengeance is the king. What are some of your favorite coasters, and what are your opinions on some of my favorite coasters and my list overall? Please put your answers in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time here on Coaster Hour.